Wan Jiayang clenched her teeth. The wound on her ankle was still throbbing. It was a wound inflicted by Pyo in their recent battle. The small wound made her feel as if a needle was piercing her ankle. The wound itself wasn't that serious. Even if it went through her ankle, the hole itself was so small that it was unlikely to leave a scar. The problem was not the wound on her ankle, but her wounded pride. I couldn't even properly unleash the swordsmanship I've been learning. If she had lost after a fierce battle, her pride would not have been hurt so much. She would have understood why she lost, and she would feel an unbearable sense of defeat. She didn't get the nickname Phantom Swordsman by doing nothing. After appearing in Jianghu, she did quite a bit of fighting and gained fame by punishing rogues and gangsters. As she acted fiercely like that, Jianghu recognized her feats and gave her the title, the Phantom Swordsman. All along, she had naturally accepted her nickname as the Phantom Swordsman. But now, the nickname she had taken for granted had never felt so heavy. It was as if the weight was crushing her shoulders. Wan Jiayang only now realized the heaviness of the special title she had. I'm nothing special. I can't believe I was satisfied with my reputation back then. I put a dent in my master's reputation. Her master was the swordsman Han Yuqian. As far as swordsmanship goes, he was a super powerhouse who achieved unparalleled status. He hasn't allowed a single defeat in his life. Wan Jiayang thought that she would similarly walk the path of invincibility. It was something she thought of as normal and inevitable, so of course, she didn't have a single doubt about it, but she ended up being defeated. It was her first time to meet such a young and skilled warrior. She was so scared that her teeth trembled. It wasn't just a matter of her opponent being strong or weak. He was like a snake. He hid himself in the grass while observing its prey. Just as a snake induces a fundamental fear in humans, Pyo also provokes a terrible fear in the warriors. The human being, Pyo itself, is something that gives fear. Only those who competed against Pyo directly would realize how terrifying he was. It's been 2 hours since their fight, but Wan Jiayang still couldn't get over the feeling of her defeat. Maybe because it was the first defeat in her life, so the feeling of defeat had lingered for so long. Still, Wan Jiayang was faring better. Unlike her, Nung Song could not stand the humiliation and hasn't come out of the 4C pavilion. Where did such a person come from? Whenever she would think about Pyo, her face would contort. She shook her head and gritted her teeth. The city of Chengdu was as chaotic as Wan Jiayang's heart. This was because many warriors were on the lookout for Hukum, Tuck. At that moment, someone passing by bumped into her. Wan Jiayang raised her head and apologized. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something else for a while. She couldn't finish her words. A black hand came over her face. In an instant, her vision went black and she quickly lost consciousness. The black figure who easily subdued Wan Jiayang soon carried her. Heh heh. The black figure was Hukum. Hukum carried Wan Jiayang's limp body on his shoulders. Wan Jiayang, who had been subjected to Hukum's technique, could not resist at all. You will be a good ingredient. Hukum murmured. His eyes were filled with resentment towards Jin Jianwu. He wanted to thoroughly destroy Jin Jianwu. However, Jin Jianwu and the Hao clan members' response was quicker than he expected, so he could not achieve his desired result. The most disappointing thing about it is that his work didn't do much damage to Jin Jianwu at all. He planned to kill everyone in cold blood to drive him to despair, but it only ended with Xiao Munpyang's death. Because of that devilish bastard, it was deeply regrettable that Xiao Munpyang easily lost his life to Pyo, since he could have created more havoc if he had gone even more wild and crazy for a little longer. Where did such a guy come from? Xiao Munpyang was not in any way weak, but he couldn't even fight back against Pyo and had his head cut off at once. Hukum had never seen such a martial art in his entire life. Although he has yet to meet Pyo in person, Pyo's eyes were enough to frighten him. He recognized at the moment he looked into Pyo's eyes that he's one of his kind, a person who is suited in the dark rather than the light. The same kind as him, someone who is capable of committing any vicious thing without hesitation just to achieve his goal. He could only have the advantage over Pyeongwoo if he could make his preparations one by one over time, but if he meets Pyeongwoo unexpectedly, he could not be confident of his victory. That's how terrifying Pyeongwoo was. I'm forced to step down for now, but I'll definitely come back. Hukum felt no shame in escaping. Rather, he thought it would be more efficient to escape and get his revenge after finishing all his preparations. But it still didn't fit his temper. So he thought of a plan on how to land a great blow on Jin Jianwoo even as he was running away. This is the only reason why he still remained in Chengdu. And now his intended purpose has been achieved. He accomplished it by aiming for Won Jie-young. Hukum was convinced that Won Jie-young is a precious person to Jin Jianwoo. Furthermore, her characteristics and features were appropriate. Hukum liked to manipulate the minds of others. His technique exerted its best power when his demon eyes, cursed poison, and dream-dispersing drug were combined. Once he successfully suppressed someone, they would act as his puppets. But Hukum had no intention of stopping there. So he studied how to make his puppets even stronger. He found such a way by going through the vision of the Xiaolian temple. The problem is that all the materials needed to implement the method are in the Xiaolian temple. For that reason, there was a premise that he had to bring Won Jie-young to Xiaolian temple intact, but Hukum was willing to take the trouble. How dare you interrupt my event? As long as he could torment Jin Jianwoo, he was willing to do any hard work. Hukum looked in front of him with his gloomy eyes. In the distance, he could see a group of warriors busy searching for something or someone. He already knew who they were looking for. Hukum laughed at them. Until now, Hukum had never shown his true self in front of others. Hukum found it funny how those people would never figure out his real self. Hukum disappeared without a sound, leaving nothing but his laughter. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Tang Socha looked at the streets of Chengdu with his brow furrowed. Hell, there's no such thing as a sunny day. Chengdu had recently experienced great bloodshed last year. He wondered if things are starting to finally settle down, but once again the wind of destruction was sweeping through the whole city. At this point, he was thinking whether Chengdu was actually cursed. Thankfully, the confusion seemed to have resolved to some extent as dawn came. The screams of the people also subsided, and the flames that soared up high in the sky were also extinguished. Tang Socha's workshop luckily avoided suffering damage. Still, he couldn't shake off his ominous feeling. His feelings soon became reality. Pyeongwoo had arrived into his workshop. Brother? Seeing the sudden appearance of Pyeongwoo, Tang Socha stiffened. It was because Pyeongwoo's expressionless face seemed somehow different from the usual. What's going on? I think I will be away for a long time. Brother? I'm in need of some items. Where are you going? Zizing. Zizing? Tang Socha's eyes shook. Zizing is a place that could only be reached by walking over the western plateau of Sichuan province for more than a month. He couldn't help but wonder why Pyeongwoo was suddenly going to such a faraway place. Is it because of what happened today? Pyeongwoo nodded his head silently. Tang Socha looked at Pyeongwoo for a moment with a sad gaze. Pyeongwoo was trying his best to live a quiet life, but the people around him just couldn't leave him alone and would disturb him as they liked. Tang Socha, who looked into Pyeongwoo's emotionless eyes for a moment, said, "Wait here for a moment." He entered the workshop. Pyeongwoo, who was left alone, looked at the city of Chengdu. The wind carried a bloody smell. Hukum manipulated people like Seo Munpyeong without ever using his own hands. As a result, many people died today. Pyeongwoo himself once terrorized Chengdu, but unlike Hukum, he did not drag unrelated people to the issue of Jianghu. Hukum's method was truly the worst. If anyone is caught by his technique, they would continuously suspect and doubt each other. The incident that happened in Chengdu was proof of that fact. Most of the people who died were killed by the same people whom they trusted. As a result, confusion and distrust became inevitable. It didn't matter to him though. Not until Hukum touched a person Pyeongwoo was related to. While it was Seo Munpyong who drove Su Hyang to death, Hukum was the one who drove Seo Munpyong to do so. If he keeps Hukum alive, he didn't know when a similar scenario would happen again. That was the reason why Pyowool moved. After waiting for a while, Tang Socha came out with something. What he brought was a black leather. Tang Socha spread out the leather and said, "It's a waterproof cloak. I made it by using a special and strong oil, so it can also block hot flames, to some extent. There are several pockets inside, so you can store some small things." Tang Socha wrapped the cloak around Pyowool. The size was just right, as if it was intentionally made for Pyowool. As Tang Socha said, there was a pocket on the inside of the cloak to store various things. And in the pocket, the things Pyowool needed were already stored. Brother might not need it, but the cloak already contains some basic weapons. Just take it. There might come a time where you would need it. And take this as well. This time, Tang Socha took out a small porcelain bottle from his arms and handed it to Pyowool. What is this? I managed to recover the white phosphorus fire, which is an item used by the Tang family a long time ago. Once attached to the body, it is a flame that would never go out. Is there a flame in here? No, it only contains oil, that is the medium for the white phosphorus fire. If you spray it and ignite it, the white phosphorus fire will start to burn. Because there are only a few drops, use it sparingly. Better yet, don't use it at all. Pyowool took the porcelain bottle and put it in the deepest storage space of his cloak. I'll use it well. It's difficult to make. If possible, don't use it. I'll think about it. Damn it. From the way you talk, I'm sure you'll be using it. I have to use it since you already gave it to me. Anyway, have a safe trip. Since I'm busy with work, I'll have to return back inside now. Tang Socha waved his hands once and went back to the workshop. Pyowool looked at the tightly closed studio door and turned around. There was a man waiting for him when he came out on the main road. It was Jin Jianwu. Jin Jianwu looked at Pyowool's entire body with a sharp gaze. That's a cloak I haven't seen before. Are you trying to go to the Xiaolian temple? Did you come here just to say that? Jia Young is gone. Jia Young? The woman who was hurt by you. I was close with her. Jin Jianwu's expression became serious. He didn't see one Jia Young all night until this morning. Furthermore, she had no reason to disappear without saying anything to him. Jin Geometry Wu, who finished investigating her whereabouts, was convinced that she had been kidnapped or killed by Hukum. He's after me. He initially chose Pyong to torment me. And now he chose to kidnap Jia Young. He's trying to get revenge on me. So you're coming along? He must have gone to the Xiaolian temple. Since I can't find and track him on my own abilities, I'll have to leave it to you. You haven't forgotten that I killed Seo Munpyong, have you? I can forget my resentment against you for a while. Jin Jianwu looked directly at Pyowool. There was an unmistakable stubbornness in both of his eyes. He was determined to follow Pyowool no matter what. Pyowool turned around and said, "You'll have to try your best to follow along. If you fall behind, I'll leave you. You don't have to worry about that, but how will you find him? I'm sure he's already out of Chengdu." All of the warriors of the Hao clan's Chengdu branch were already mobilized in pursuing Hukum. But up to now, they still couldn't find him. The shadowless monk, Yu Shinfeng, also joined in the search by mobilizing his personal connections, and similarly, they failed to see the trail of Hukum's shadow. Jin Jianwu wondered how Pyowool would pursue Hukum in this situation. Pyowool stepped forward and said, "Nothing alive could escape from me.